So one thing I did see you talk about the other day, I kind of have to scroll through your Mastodon because you're posting a Mastodon more than I do. I don't know how you have time to post a Mastodon as much as you do. But I did see you post this. I guess it's a slide of people sort of discrediting a lot of the work that Curl has done. Like you're like, oh, I could write Curl in a weekend. Like,
Yes, yeah.
yeah,
I collect some of them, some screenshots of them. I think it goes back to the sort of notion people actually think that some of the network stuff is so easy,
right.
and I mean it looks so easy at times, and it's often actually also easy to do it in a half broken way that works most of the
Mhm,
time against your particular server in a controlled way, right? So
mhm,
I mean, as I said, the first version of HTTP GET, that was just a few hundred lines of code, and it
mhm.
actually downloaded HTTP fine, right?
Well,
So
I'm sure, yeah, copying that would probably take a weekend to do. Like,
exactly, and I think that is the mindset with so many people. So sure, I mean, it doesn't take a genius to write those 100 lines of code. You can do
mhm,
that in a weekend. Sure, everyone can do that, and and, and actually, um, sure, can do that. But that is not really what curl is, and
mhm.
I think people have a hard time sometimes to grasp exactly what it means to be curl.
Yeah, my favorite one is the one you put in the middle. I think you could replace 99% of the uses of curl, download one file via HTTPS with like 100 lines of Python or Rust or Go. It's not critical infrastructure in the same way that OpenSSL or LLVM or WebKit is. Like, yeah, you could replace downloading a file with 100 lines of Python script, but
Yes.
like, what about the rest of it that it does?
Yeah, and there's such a stupid comment, because yeah, you would use that, and but how would that download it? It would still be a library in there that would download HTTP, right? So
Well, yeah.
someone would still have written that anyway. So yeah, so and in many cases they would end up using libcurl anyway, in somewhere below there, right? So of course, I also get that quite a lot, I think, because from the outside, it doesn't look that complicated, and it looks the same as it has looked like forever. And a very common comment is that I used curl 10 years ago and I used it yesterday and didn't spot this. There's no difference. I used it exactly the same way. It looks the same way, behaves the same way. So what did you actually do with the last 10 years? So sort of, you work full time on this and it's exactly the same.
Well, that's sort of the thing you're trying to go for. Like you're, as you said, you're not trying to break old use cases, so it should look the same that it looked 10 years ago. Like that's the point.
Exactly. That is sure. You notice exactly, and that takes quite a lot of effort to make sure that it actually looks exact and works exactly the same. So, but it's when you're sort of, if you don't think about it properly, it might look easy or stupid or I don't know.
Well, it's also really easy to. This is why I like to bring developers onto this podcast. It's really easy to criticize a project when you don't really know the person behind it. Like you look at the project as this giant block of code. It's like this is a thing. It doesn't matter who made it. It's just this is a thing that exists and ignore all of the effort that's gone into that over the years, making sure the test case is there, making sure the documentation is there, making sure that all of this fits together in a way that makes sense and doesn't unnecessarily introduce security vulnerabilities. Like dealing with all of this stuff, like someone has to do that. It's not just magically appearing. And I think a lot of people tend to forget that there are these people that work in the open source space that do spend a lot of time working on these projects that sort of it I guess yeah, a lot of people just ignore the human aspect entirely.
Yeah, yeah, and the time it takes to mature, and sort of, uh, uh, I often try to come back to that the sort of one of the biggest competitive advantages curl has is the time we have sort of been out there. So I mean, if you want to compete with curl, sure, you can write a replacement, but can you write a replacement that has proven itself for 2 decades already without a breaking functionality? That is some of the powers with curl. Not that it actually works today, and because you can write something that seems to work today, that's easy. But keep working and keep working the same way 15 years from now. That is harder. That is a lot of work.
Well, what also helps now with making a copy of curl is that curl has come up with this model that works. So it's not like you're going from where you were back in 1996, where you didn't know what you were doing. Like,
That
curl is there.
very
If
true.
someone wants to copy it, like, they can do it. They can use it as a reference.
Yeah, that is so true. But because sometimes also people seem to think that where we are now is sort of, it's natural that we ended up here, right? Look back from 96 to here. Of course, this is where we ended up, but it was never. I mean, why would we end up with this? It's every single thing we do, right? It's a decision. Should we do it that way? Should we go that way? Is this the right thing? Is this the wrong thing? Should we do this? Should we do that? And every little decision we do, and you know, building things in a particular direction, brick after brick after brick, and then eventually today we have this. So sure, you're completely right. So replicating or reproducing, writing your replacement today, that would be much easier because we've already showed how this is how you can do it. So if you want to do replacement, this is sort of one way to mimic it. Of course, much faster than all the wrong turns we have taken through the times, or, you know, as we've talked about, re-architectures and refactors numerous times, because we came up with things that, oh, wait a minute, we didn't think about this before, and now we have to do it this way. So of course it takes a lot of that. But ideally also, we are actually underneath the surface actually pretty well suited for what possibly comes next as well, right? Because we've done this so many times already. We know that down the road, around the next corner, there's going to be new protocols. You know, there's going to be new versions of every little subcomponent in here coming. Maybe not this year, maybe not next year, but they're coming. And then we know that we're going to have to add support for them, and we know how to do that. And, you know, adding more combinations into this lovely mess of different protocols and versions.